Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Bhakti Fundamentals. Today, we're going to explore a topic that may sound surprising at first, and that is that distress in our life can actually lead to our good fortune if it makes us turn towards spiritual life. Now, at first glance, this statement might feel a little far-fetched, right? When we experience distress, whether it comes in the form of anxiety at work, the loss of a loved one, or disappointment with the world around us, our natural reaction tends to be to avoid it, escape it, or try to fix it as quickly as possible if it's in our power to do so. No one wakes up and says, I hope something difficult happens to me today, right? However, the great Bhakti Ācārya, or teacher, Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura, explains in his book Jaiva-dharma that distress can actually play a crucial role in our spiritual growth, if we allow it to. And just to be clear, this topic is not about seeking suffering or enjoying pain in some unhealthy way. Rather, it's about understanding how distress in our lives can be transformative when our circumstances are seen through a spiritual lens. To understand this, let's begin with a foundational spiritual teaching. We are each individual spirit souls, or jivas, and we each have free will. This means that we each have the ability to choose how we act. While we are indeed influenced by the three material modes of nature that we have discussed in previous sessions, we are the ones who ultimately decide how we act, what we pursue, and how we direct our lives. And this is actually a great gift. Because of free will, we have the potential to elevate ourselves through our choices and actions. In other words, we can choose to explore spiritual topics and engage in spiritual practices that purify our consciousness. In this way, we can gradually reconnect with the Supreme, who is our source and the source of everything that exists. But there's another side to free will. We can also degrade ourselves through our choices by becoming absorbed only in temporary material pursuits and acting in ways that keep us identifying with our temporary body and mind, rather than understanding ourselves to be unique spirit souls, which is our true identity. So our free will cuts both ways. Now, before spiritual life, we use our free will to pursue exclusively temporary material goals: job success, hearth and home, perfect family and health, whatever it may be. Now, none of these pursuits is inherently wrong, as they can all be spiritualized. A while back, we gave a series on how to connect our lives to Kṛṣṇa, a process known as spiritual dovetailing. But when these same goals are pursued apart from spiritual life, when they are fully divorced from Kṛṣṇa, from spiritual life, then none of them can ever completely satisfy us. Even if they are perfect our whole lives, at the end of this lifetime, we have to give up everything we had and leave all the people we loved behind. Since matter is temporary, exclusively material activities and their results will never fully satisfy us, the real us, the spirit soul. Matter cannot satisfy spirit. Only spirit, spiritual activities, can satisfy spirit, us. Thus, over time, our exclusive material pursuits lead to frustration, distress. This leads us to the important point that the distress we experience at times is not random. It's connected to how we're using our free will, how we are choosing to act in this material world. And this brings us to a significant clarification. Our distress is not something imposed on us by the Supreme. Rather, we, the living beings, create our own happiness and distress by our different activities in this lifetime and previous ones. This material world is governed by natural laws, and one of those is the law of karma. Karma simply means that our actions have consequences. So through our own choices and actions, we experience both happiness and distress at different times in our lives. Now, while even temporary material happiness sounds a whole lot better than the temporary distresses that we inevitably encounter in life, we mentioned at the beginning of this video that distress can lead to our good fortune in spiritual life. How exactly? Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura, a prolific and realized writer in our Bhakti tradition, outlines an interesting progression from material distress to spiritual happiness or good fortune. He mentions that first, before spiritual life, we are attached to the pursuit of material goals. That material pursuit eventually leads to distress, as we discussed earlier. Now, when our distress becomes intense, we naturally begin to hanker after happiness of a permanent variety. And so we begin to question, is there something more to life? Is there a permanent kind of happiness? Is there an alternative to material existence and distress? These are the kinds of existential questions addressed in the Bhagavad Gita. And from these questions emerges discrimination, the ability to begin seeing the difference between what is temporary material and what is lasting spiritual. Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura explains that from this initial discrimination comes a desire for knowledge. And when we sincerely desire spiritual knowledge, Kṛṣṇa, who is present within each of our hearts as the Paramatma, the Supersoul, reciprocates with our desire. He guides us from within and helps arrange things from without so that we come into contact with saintly persons, with authentic spiritual teachings, and gradually begin to develop faith in the process of spiritual life. Therefore, Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura shows how what began as distress for us can actually serve as the road to our ultimate good fortune, which is spiritual life. Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura gives another powerful analogy. He explains that just as gold is purified by intense heat and hammering, the soul, each of us, has our material conditioning, our material way of seeing life purified through our unique challenges and difficulties in this material world. In other words, the distress we experience in life can function as a refining process if we allow it to. It can help burn away the material impurities covering our pure consciousness, our material misconceptions, our misplaced material attachments, and our tendency to look for pure, unalloyed, lasting happiness in temporary material pursuits. Therefore, those who are spiritually thoughtful, those who are far-sighted, don't see distress as simply negative. From a narrow perspective, distress exclusively looks like suffering. However, the difference is not in the situation itself, it's in how we understand it. Now, this doesn't mean we should artificially seek out distress or minimize the suffering of others. Rather, it means that when distress naturally comes to us, as it inevitably does, we can begin to reframe it and make a little course correction towards spiritual life. If we allow our distress to nudge us towards Bhakti Yoga, the process of reconnecting with the Supreme, Kṛṣṇa, through powerful spiritual practices such as chanting the names of the Supreme, then we will ultimately discover spiritual happiness, which is of a permanent nature. And while happiness is not the goal of Bhakti Yoga, it naturally arises as a side effect of sincere spiritual practice. So the next time we experience distress, we can pause and consider, how can this situation benefit me spiritually? What can I learn from it that will bring me closer to Kṛṣṇa? And if we begin to approach our challenges in life in this manner again and again, then each of our perceived setbacks in life can actually transform into steps forward on our spiritual path to Kṛṣṇa. And that's pretty powerful. So that's all we have for today on the alchemy of distress and how our material struggles can actually lead to our spiritual good fortune. Please let us know what you thought of this session inspired by Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura, this great Ācārya in our spiritual lineage. And let us know if you have any questions that we might answer in a follow-up session. In the meantime, thank you for listening today, and we'll see you next time on Bhakti Fundamentals.